Dun, 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 dun. Yes, I'll have to make this real brief. Yes. An unofficial, unlicensed Transformers crossover with Star Trek. Last year, we already did Assimilations, which was the Doug Muth Lizard story. Doug Muth and Lizard story is part of the Trans Tech series. So we already did the Borg, the Borg one, but we changed the Borg to some other. I think it was Decepticons and Doom or something instead of the Borg. And we held on to that idea though of the Borg story and said, we could do something with this because the Borg part of the story was technically only the last part, the last act, really. So. And finished up on season 2. This is a real brief. Finished on Star Trek Location season 2, the Fallen Ones. You know, if there were 2 other stories that were worthy, we could totally do them. And anyways, like Stonehouse Sale of the 21st Century. That was one earlier one too, a short story. Also, the same guy, Lizard and Doug Muth. But that wasn't quite. It was about an hour. So, but we found Salvage, which was another half hour. It was an interesting story by someone named Ambassador Saron over there at Lexicon. It's a little later, 2006 story, in the same time period. And if we put those 3 together, we've got like a roughly 90-minute movie. If you take out all the fluff and anything extraneous that was from the other story, because you don't want that in there. Wrote a wraparound thing, a la Tales from the Crypt. Done this before, a creep show, except it's Transformers. And set it in 2403, and they go back to 2022 to encounter the Beasties Transformers from the collection over here, and that's now upstairs, getting ready for their close up. And we have a plan to do a mid-season just for fun summer movie, Transformers meet Star Trek. A Starship Locations meets Transformers. Just for fun. It's not really canon with all Transformers mush, although it is mush stories. It's not canon with Starship Locations. It's just for fun. Mark's cards approved. The last maybe 20 minutes of it is the Borg invading the 2022 Earth, and it is nuts. It has Autobots and Decepticons and Maximals and Predacons fighting the Borg. I don't know how we're going to film that, but it does sound pretty impressive. And there's a giant robot in it. The original story had Spike and Carly and Daniel in it. Or Spike and Carly was pregnant and all that stuff. We jumped that ahead of generation and said in our version of the Assimilation story that it was Daniel Witwicky and his girlfriend instead. So in honor of that, the character of Jenna is in this. Jenna McLeod in the story is in it in her mecha. The Star Trek people show up. Of course, they can't fight the Borg, so the Transformers have them stand back while they go fight the onslaught of the Transformers. There's 2 discrete stories in there as well. The heart of the story is the humans contact a ship. They contact a Transformer on the Emmett Till goes into the time warp thing and encounters a Decepticon or a renegade named Hound, a renegade Autobot named Hound, who was in a sort of Deep Space Nine pseudo scenario because of the time warp. And meanwhile, they try to figure out what he's up to. The Quintessons show up, and then there's another short story that was a sale of the 24th century. It was changed from being Swindle to Hound, just because it makes more sense. and it can't be Quark and Odo, so it's not. It's Nog and Vitacola, because it really can't be Quark and Odo. So things have been changed dramatically. 20% change, 30% change. In the other short story, it's the one where Kirk and crew were going to meet up with Galvatron from Transformers the movie and pull him out of his death spiral out of Unicron and hang out with him. And Spock was going to talk to Galvatron. Change that. So it's not Kirk and crew. It's the Chimera. It's the people from the Till who are on the Bird of Prey, which was being dragged along by the Till in the beginning of the story, and from the end of the Fallen One story. And they go through time warp with the Maximals. The Maximals head out first, after the Predacons. So it's as if the Transformers are doing their own thing while the humans are just reacting to what they're doing, which is kind of fun. Also, it's kind of fun that the two short stories are centrally about how the humans react to a Transformer or two Transformers, as opposed to all of them. They do eventually react to all of them in the final act, but in the other ones, yeah. And then Optimus Prime's not in it, but Primal is in it. Magnus is in it. I like the idea of it not being the main leaders. It's Dragon. It's a dinosaur, T-Rex, Megatron, and Galvatron shows up. But yeah, and it's Netflix characters that show up. We got Inferno and New Inferno, and a bunch of them. Yeah, and they show Tiger Track shows up, and these two Black Panther characters, Abra and Kadabra, they show up. Oddly enough, not Houdini, although we could just say Tigertron is Houdini if we wanted to. Or Cheetor is Houdini if we wanted to. Probably should, just to throw him in there. Gotta have his older sisters in there, not have him in there. So maybe Cheetor is Houdini. Anyway, so yeah, or Tigatron is Houdini. Anyways, so yeah, that's pretty much it. As far as the story goes, it's about 105 pages with all together, the three stories together. The ending is insane. It's nuts. And it is the month stories that have been refit without their say, but we give them a byline in the credits. It'll say it's inspired by, it's based on a story by these guys. Yeah. Moth and Lizard and Salvage. Only because Salvage was good. Otherwise, we wouldn't have done it. It would have been a shorter story. Salvage was good. I know he wanted to have Leonard Nimoy meet Galvatron because Galvatron. I don't know Saron, who wrote it, saying that he wanted Galvatron to meet Leonard Nimoy because it's funny, it's the same voice. And we tried to do that with Starscream and Cobra Commander, the same voice. In an earlier story of ours, and it didn't really work too well. It was okay, but it was cheeky. It's like, no, it shouldn't be Spock and Kirk and crew. That just doesn't make sense. Just make it these other guys. And therefore, then, he meets up with Shadow instead. And that makes more sense, because what he does to Galvatron's damaged form is to mess with him. Spock wouldn't do that. So if it's somebody else, then it's fine. Then it makes sense. So if somebody else, Shadow might do that. So anyway, so that's the gist of the story so far here on the March 19th. Yeah. So yeah, summer movie. Is in production. Well, pre-production. Well, we'll see what and Mark's cards, and I agree. We did meet on Thursday. We did agree that it does not need to be a big budget super thing with all the sets set up correctly and everything. It just for fun. Like Phelan Portis does his just puts his action figures in front of the camera and films them. You can totally do that and get away with it because it's not canon. So try not to get any fingers in the way. That's all. It doesn't need to be. Yeah, it's not going to match. So it'll be fine. And yeah, it'll be. Yeah, Star Trek meets the Transformers. Unlike the comic book, we don't have the Enterprise. There's a comic book version. We don't have the Enterprise change into a Transformer. That's dumb. We have a giant Borg ship that walks around. It's dead. I don't know if that's less dumb or not. We also have a tiny Beast Wars Scorponok that walks around. It's just kind of weird. Scorponok is a little guy. So yeah, we'll see what happens. I wanted to make it not the main characters, which was interesting. Although Cup and Magnus do show up. Yeah, I wanted to be like, let's make it the lesser characters. Let's and make it the Beast Wars kind of, because we're kind of winking at the Rise of the Beasts, which is the Beast Wars homage crossover that is coming next year, which I'm not involved in. This is right out there. I'm not involved in that. This is my version. I'm sure the Borg and Star Trek will not be in that movie. Anyway, it's Calicat the Calicaster, and Clint Cowpoke will direct this movie.